2025 started out as one of the worst years in business for me. And eventually I was able to turn around into what I think will be one of my best. And before I get into how I turn things around, let's start with where I was coming into 2025 and actually how I got to where I was. So I started working for myself full time in 2021. I have been side hustling since 2017 and was finally able to make the leap full time into entrepreneurship. I mean, to be honest, I was leaving a job that I was extremely burnt out from and just needed to like fully go back into because I was side hustling. I got a full time job. This is a long story, but I'm trying to make it short. Um, I was going back and forth between different like roles, but also working on building my business on the side. Got a job, thought maybe I could just give up that side hustling altogether and just do this job, but the job burnt me out. And so I was like, I got to go back to what I know. And I was like, actually, I'm ready to do this full time. And I was offered a gig through a company that's currently not operating, which is why part of why I found myself in the position I was in 2025. But I was a writer for them. I work in the beer industry and I would cover stories about diversity in the beer industry because it's not very diverse industry. And I thought I should celebrate the people who make it up outside of white men. And so I would do that. And this company offered me the position to run their social media because I also run social media. I'm a writer. I'm just a creative at heart, and I love expressing my creativity in a number of ways. So they offered me that position, and I was like, "Let's go." So I took them on. I took on a few other clients, and at the beginning, those first couple of years, I was doing really well. Like I was able to replace my income at my previous job. I was bringing in good money. My goal has been like my first big financial goal after being able to replace my income was to make 100K. And so I was getting every year, I was getting very close to making 100K. But at the same time, I was doing a lot. I was writing, I was running social media, I was a podcast host, I had my own newsletter, I started a community for Black and Brown people. I was doing a lot of things and I was quickly becoming I don't want to say I was becoming burnt out as a result, but I was getting to the point where I was really starting to affect my mental health. I felt myself um, unable to break away from work and feeling as if I had to always be on because I had so much to do all the time. And it was hard for me to let go of the many things that I was doing. I essentially collected all these different jobs and hobbled them together and called it a business. When really it wasn't really a business. It was just me renting myself out to all of these different people doing these different things. And everything I was doing was fun and exciting. Like I loved it all. But at the same time, I really was like, this is not sustainable. And 2024 came and it was an amazing year. I turned 40. We took a trip to Italy and Paris, which was like a dream for me. I like traveled all over. Oh my gosh, I traveled so much in 2024. I went to Belgium for the first time through the company that I was working with that's now closed. And I got nominated for a James Beard Award through that same company. Went to Chicago. I did not win, but my gosh, being nominated was amazing. And to have my work, you know, just, and this was a piece that I really poured my heart into. It's probably my, I mean, I would consider it my best piece, not just because of the nomination, but because of the amount of love and effort I put into it. And so I just like, I was on this high And it was a great year, but also at the same time, I was struggling because I had so much on my plate. And then the company decided to shut its doors. It's indefinite, so maybe they'll come back, maybe they won't. But when you have something indefinite like that, essentially I had to think of it as this is done. This part of my life is done. This chapter is closed, and I need to figure out what my next move is. And at this time, too, the beer industry, and it still is very much struggling with, I mean, it's a number of things. I've done a video about why the beer industry is struggling. There are a lot of real things happening with tariffs. There's things happening with just the culture around beer. There's so many things. But as a result, the industry is struggling, and I think in a lot of ways trying to find itself. And I looked at that and I was like, I read a lot of business books and articles and things like that because I've never run a business before. So I'm figuring a lot of stuff out as I go. And I was like, maybe I don't need to build a business in the beer industry because that was the initial intention. I think all of my clients since I've walked out and started working for myself full time have been in the beer industry. Of course, I've had some that aren't, or kind of like on the side of just food and bev in general. But for the most part, my clients were in the beer industry, and a lot of the work and my income was through the beer industry. And now a lot of those funds have dried up. And so I'm like, well, this isn't a good idea for me to continue building my business in the beer industry, or is it? And I think that whole thing combined with me having so much of my work coming from this one client, which I knew would bite me in the butt later, and it did when they decided to close down. But I again had a hard time letting go, and but I also knew I was struggling. I mean, there were so many signs. I tell you, one of the first lessons that I learned from this process is just like you have to listen to your gut. And my gut was essentially screaming at me to change things up, and I did not listen because I was being too stubborn. I was not willing to let go of things that I enjoyed, even though it was causing me, one, a lot of stress to keep holding on to all of those things. But also, like, I wanted to build a sustainable business. Like, I didn't start this thing so I would eventually burn out. That was not the goal. So I walked into 2025 just very just depleted because I had been working to build a business in this industry. No matter how many clients I had in the beer industry, it was like I felt like I was hobbling together a business and something that wasn't sustainable. How was I even going to grow it to hit the revenue goals that I wanted to hit? Like, it was just all this stuff. And then I walked into 2025 and all of that was gone. I walked into 25 with no clients. I had no clients. My revenue for January was essentially zero outside of the fact that one of the clients that I had, our contract ended in December and I received my last check in January. And I think from January to March, that whole entire first quarter, I had no income, no revenue in the business. And I remember feeling if I were trying to pull and keep myself together. I started therapy again. I am very lucky that my husband, his job offers employee assistance benefits. And because of that, like, I am able to get free therapy, and also a coach. This particular program has coaching involved as well. And I mean, there's a limited amount of sessions that I can have for free, but just having those free sessions were incredibly helpful. And I started basically building a support system for myself because not being able to bring in money for our family to contribute after I had worked so hard to make sure that I was still contributing as I ventured out into this new thing, this new uncertain thing. And then it all fell apart. There was a lot of guilt, and there was just a lot of feeling as if I wasn't capable. And we're talking about the fact that just a few months ago, I was just nominated for a James Beard Award. And I should have felt like I was at the top of my game. And I didn't. I didn't feel that way as I walked into 25. And I mean, I would say I was demoralized. Like I was just not in a good headspace place. But as I came into the year, I also knew that if I made a plan, that I could work the plan and I would be able to work my way out of this. And so my last video that I put up on this channel was my attempt at trying to figure out how am I going to get myself out of this situation, because I knew, one, that I needed to rebuild my business, that the way I had positioned myself was just not good. For one, I was not sharing any of my work on social media. So when it came time for me to like share, hey, these are the things that I do, these are the things that I'm capable of, that was not there. That did not exist. It was more of a personal account. There's a whole story about how that account started and what it evolved into, which I won't get into right now because I only have but so much time this morning to share with y'all. But if you're interested, let me know. I will talk about the evolution of that account, but it was not a place where I really talked about my work like that. Sometimes I would share, I did this article or interviewed this person, but I didn't really feel like my work was the focal point of that account. And so I was like, I knew I needed to change that, but there was nerves around changing that. And for a while, I just posted on LinkedIn because I felt like if I'm going to talk about my work, I have to talk about my work on LinkedIn. But yeah, I had a plan, and I remember listening to a lot of podcasts. One that really helped me was, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a podcast from Rachel Rodgers. I have spent some time in her community, and I really love the way she teaches about business. I think that she is just, her and her team are just so incredibly knowledgeable about what it's like to be a marginalized person building a business. And I just really have so much like respect for the resources that they have created. And I say that as someone who has used them and someone who like loves creating things like that. Like, you can tell she knows her audience. And I love that shit. So I have been still referring to her things when it comes to building my business. And so I found a podcast I think she had recently done where that talked about like how, almost like how to pull yourself out of a hole. If I'll find it and I will link it below. But it was, she essentially said, you know, if you are trying, like, you need to make money fast, or you need leads. And I don't think she necessarily used the term leads, because I think the way she talks about business is very approachable. And I think sometimes some of this terminology feels like it can do this, right? So she said, you basically reach out to make a list of maybe it was like 50 people, maybe 100 people, 30 people. I don't know. It was make a list. And when you made the list, you went through everybody on that list. If you did not have a lead by the time you got to the end of that list, you would not believe it, because that is not the case. And another thing she talked about was making sure you have a marketing channel. So somewhere where you can talk about what you do and what you can provide and all of that, you need to be able to post there. Like, I think it was like once a week. So that became my plan. Like, I was like, okay, let me do this. Um, and I also will note that I knew that going back into and rebuilding my business, I needed to have a singular focus. And I couldn't figure out what that was because after spending from 2017 to the beginning of 2025, was that's nearly that's 8 years singularly focused on the beer industry. I was like, where else do I go? Like, where do I go? What do I do? And that was a very hard thing for me because I still love the beer industry and I was like, I don't want to leave. And like, I don't want to be someone who leaves when things get bad. Like, what if I can be a part of this, of what helps, us come out of this? I firmly believe that beer is one of those. Beer has been around for millennia. It is a part of the human experience, and beer is not going anywhere. Industries have hard seasons. They have hard times. I mean, the cocktail bartending, they're having like a revolution now, but like back in the 70s and maybe I think in the 80s, like people weren't drinking cocktails like that. People love cocktails now. And so I know that this is just like, we go through cycles. We go through cycles, things change, but that doesn't mean things are going to be like that forever. Nothing's like nothing stays the same forever. I know this. So I'm having all this, like, trying to figure it out. And I'm just at this point reaching out to everybody I know. I made my like list, reached out to everybody I could, asking for work, asking if they had anything for me. I redid my website. I started figuring out how I could post on Instagram instead of just LinkedIn, because Instagram is where I had my biggest audience. I had around like 6,000 followers. And I worked hard on that account. But I also, if I am honest, was just doing things. I was just having fun with it. I wasn't really trying to be strategic. I was just posting. And it wasn't really something I took seriously consistently. And yeah, so I spent January, February, March, that first quarter, just figuring it out and trying to find ways to bring money into the business as quickly as possible. So I'm trying to bring money in, but I'm also not sure what I want to do, what industry I want to be in. And I am just trying not to flounder. I'm trying to put structure to my day because I have no work. I have no work. I was showing up at this desk just to just so I could keep a routine. Sometimes I would, take the evening off or the afternoon off. Maybe I worked just the morning, but I didn't have any clients. So I spent a lot of time just figuring things out. And then I joined a group of women entrepreneurs here in Atlanta back in, I think the group started maybe a little after COVID. And I mean, I think I was very new in my business. So I was full time in my business in 21. So I think the group started in 21. And we just get together every month. We talk about our businesses. Initially, it wasn't a very structured thing. We would just kind of vent and share resources, but now we have like a structure to it. And I've just enjoyed how much it's grown, and it's been very incredibly helpful for me because I am a solopreneur and I spend a lot of time in this room talking to myself. So it was very great to have not only have other people to talk to, but also to see that I'm not alone in some of the things that I'm feeling. And in that group, we have recently let in a few new members. There was a woman who is a muralist. And like you meet someone and you just immediately are drawn to them. Like they say something and you're just like, I really want to know more about this person. I really want to like get to know this person. And that was her. Like, her name is Lacey Longino. She is a muralist here in Atlanta, and I mean, she does amazing, incredible work. And I was just in awe of her. I am also very much drawn to other creatives, and seeing her uh, express her creativity in this other way, it was amazing. And I really enjoyed like hearing her talk about her creativity, because I felt a lot of the same ways that she did. And in one of our meetings, she talked about how she had recently been in a really dark period herself in her business. And she was basically broke, and she was able to like make her way out of it. And I hope she doesn't mind me sharing her story, but it really inspired me, because I hurt myself in her story. And we were sitting right next to each other, and like I could tell that she also was very much interested in me, right, and getting to know me. Like there was like this thing between us. And I also heard her talk about how she wanted to have an assistant. She was thinking about hiring an assistant. She had a big project she was working on. And I was like, I think I could do this job. And I was like, I know this isn't a job I've done before, but I think I could do this job. And she would say, I think she came in the following month, and she was like, I'm not sure. Well, I told her I wanted to talk to her after that meeting. And I think it took a while for us to connect. We eventually did. We had a good conversation. And I actually can't remember the full timeline, but we ended up working together. I told her that I was interested in helping her with her, because she also wanted help with the social media. But she also needed someone here in Atlanta to help her with her project. And I was like, I'm down. Like, I was like, I am not doing anything, and I will be happy. Like, at this point, I was like, I just need to get out of this house. Like, I need to get out of this house. I needed to feel useful. I needed to feel like I was doing something and contributing. And she was like, let's do it. So we worked together starting April. In April. And shortly after I started working with her, someone hit me up in my DMs on Instagram, because I had been sharing that I was looking for work, I was looking for opportunities. And she said, I think that this brewery is hiring for a social media person. And she sent me the link. They posted about it on LinkedIn, and they had like all these requirements and all of that. And I was like, oh, I could totally, like, I think I could do this for them. It seems like it would be a good fit. So I emailed them directly, because they did not have the posts available anymore on LinkedIn, which I never asked her why she took the post down, but I emailed her directly, and we set up a meeting. And long story short, she became my first like client in the new build, or the new version of this business. And I'm still working with them today. And then so now we're in April, we're going into May, because actually I started working with them in May. And then I'm starting to feel like, okay, things are starting to come together. The work that I did in January through March is starting to pay off. And then I spoke at a conference here, Crafted for Action. I've been a speaker, a panelist, or a moderator for that conference before. And so this year I decided, or last year I decided to speak about social media and how to tell your story online, because part of me figuring out my thing was like, what do I love? I love storytelling. I also am really like, I feel like I'm good at social media and understand social media. I'm at least very interested in this type of creative expression through social media. And also the business side of it, because there's a whole business side of being a creator and etc. And so I went there to talk to people about how to tell your story online, just like getting into the basics, because I think once you understand the basics of something, then you can start building upon things. And it's usually, I feel like we forget about the basics and then we try to overcomplicate things immediately. And I wanted people to understand, like, you just need to focus on building this foundation. So that went really well and I enjoyed it. And I remember telling myself, like, you know what? I am going to give this talk somewhere else, but I had nowhere really in mind. I just like to put things out into the universe. So now we're in Q2. The work that I did in Q1 is starting to pay off. The reaching out to people, letting people know that I am looking for work. I am looking, these are the things that I can do. So I would say that was the year that quarter I laid the foundation. Spring comes and things like, basically, if I were planting seeds in Q1, things started to come up and I was able to start harvesting. And that felt incredibly great. I decided to hire a virtual assistant in July because another one of the things that I wanted to do as I rebuilt this business was to have help before I felt like I needed help, and to take some of the admin parts of social media off my plate, because at my heart, I'm a creative. I really don't want to do the admin work at all. At all. I don't want to do it. And so I hired an admin and that was working great. I felt this relief from not having to worry about these itty bitty bits of social media. I was just able to focus on the bigger things. I was able to keep my focus in the business, which was another thing that I wanted to correct from last time, where I felt like I had spent so much time doing the work and not managing the work. I mean, no, I spent a lot of time managing the work, but I didn't spend a lot of time leading the company. I didn't spend a lot of time trying to, I had a vision. But I felt like I wasn't acting on the vision because I was so consumed with client work all the time. So at this time too, I'm not really saying that I am strictly in the beer industry. I am talking about food and bev. My audience in my mind has gotten much wider in the hopes that I am now open to more business, because the beer industry is struggling and they're not able to hire or invest in some of the things that I am offering as much as maybe somebody in the greater food and beverage, like the alcohol brands, restaurants, those kinds of people is what I wanted to attract. And so in August, or maybe actually in July, sometime in the summertime, I have this grand idea that I'm going to start a series. I'm going to do a 30-day series, and I'm going, and I'm laughing because, boy, what an idea I had. I had this idea that I would do a series about storytelling and talk about all the different stories that you should be telling within your business, because my thought was, when I talk about storytelling, and I think the idea is still valid, but when I talk about telling your story in your business, some people might not understand what that looks like and might not know how to act on that. So I thought I would come up with a series and I would talk about the 30 different stories you could tell within your business. It was unforgettable business stories. And it flopped. It flopped so hard. It was, I mean, I think I don't think I cracked. I think maybe I had gotten 300 views on at least one of the videos, but for the most part, low views, like easy 200, which is not like, now when I see a video has gotten 200 views, I think that's like Instagram just showing it to 200 people. If they didn't like it, then that's it. That's where it stops. Like, you're going to at least get 200, you know? And I was just like, oh my gosh. But I kept posting it. I posted it for full 30 days and it was just flop, 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 flop. Um, and I was like, well, I don't know. I was just trying to figure out, like, why did this do so terribly? But one, because the series was talking to no one in particular. That's why it flops. No one who was I talking to? Business owners as a whole? Like, that's too general. And I just, yeah. But I tried. I did it. And after that, I'm glad I did this, because after that, I realized, you know what? I'm going to lean back into beer. I said, I miss my people. I also, at this time, have another client. I picked up another client in July. And this client, I had actually pitched on my services in February. And they came back around in July and were like, hey, let's work together. And at this point, I'm also ecstatic because now I am helping to bridge the gap between, because we're like, this whole time we're going into debt in our personal finances. We're going into debt because I'm not able to contribute to the family. And while my husband does make a decent amount of money, we are a two income household. And so by May, by July, I'm able to breathe a sigh of relief. And now, like, because the idea of how am I going to bring in revenue enough to support us is sort of handled, taken care of, or whatever you want to call it, covered, I can now turn my attention back to what industry, who do I need to be speaking to? Who is my audience? My background is in technical writing and information. I have my master's in information design and communication. So audience is a huge part of when I think about content that I'm creating, and like, who am I speaking to is a very important question. And I was like, who am I talking to? And I was like, this series flopped because I didn't know who I was talking to. Because I'm trying to talk to everybody and I'm afraid, and all of these things came up. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to lean back into beer, because at this point, like I said, I'm working with a brewery, and the other client that came back around is also in the alcohol, in particular, the beer industry. And so I said, well, I'm still getting business from the beer industry regardless. And there's something my virtual assistant said. She said, yeah, she said, you should lean back into the beer industry. She's like, you know it. Because she actually, I worked with her before this. She used to do some copywriting work for me when I had another social media client a few years before. And so she was familiar with my work. And she said, you know the beer industry so well, you know the language that they speak. She said you should lean back into it. And I had some doubts, because I was like, yeah, but financially, if they cannot support, my business, then it's not a good move. It's not a good strategy to build my business in this place where there's a lot of turmoil and upheaval. But I was like, let me just. So starting in September, I leaned back into beer. And let me tell you, the things that have happened since have been, in my opinion, extraordinary. So I can't believe I've been talking. Okay, 34 minutes. I've been talking for 30 more minutes. But I'm getting towards the end, so just bear with me. I leaned back into beer. One of the first posts that I put up, it was something about what your beer post is missing. Because my virtual assistant was correct. I do know this industry really well. And not only do I know beer as a beverage, but I know breweries, and I know the kind of content that they have been posting. And I know how that content that they're posting is not going to work for the algorithm. And really, I believe your algorithm is your audience. And so that is really people who are saying, I'm not interested in this content. Is not the algorithm, it's people. But I don't think we want to think about that. We want to blame it on algorithm, but don't get me started on that rant. So I posted something and it got 20,000 views. I said, what? I said, what? I went from 200 views to 20,000. Okay? Even saying that out of my mouth is wild, but it gets even wilder. Okay? It gets even wilder. So in September, I posted another post. And I'm doing carousels because I'm also a little burnt out from reels because I recorded 30 reels for this challenge. And I'm like, I'm just going to do carousels. I posted a reel about why Gen Z is not, or something about Gen Z drinking beer. I'm looking at my note here. It's currently sitting at 238,000 views. It has become my highest viewed post. And from that post, I wish I would have wrote it down. I think I gained like 600 or 700 new followers. And this was extraordinary for me because my account had been sitting at 6,400 followers for like years. I hadn't had no growth. And I couldn't figure out, well, it's not that I couldn't figure out why I didn't have any growth. I wasn't willing to admit why I wasn't having any growth. And I did admit, I remember having a conversation with my husband and I was like, it's because my content's not good enough. I was like, that's what it is. My content's not good enough for the growth that I want. Like, it was good enough for the people who were there, but how was I attracting new people? So by October, I'm like, all right, I'm leaning all the way hard into this. And so I was like, let me do that. And I started to see so much growth. My account, every time I logged in, there were more and more people showing up. And so in November, I said, okay, I got something. In October, I think I said, I got something. Let me just keep on this path. And also realize that I can't manage social media for all of these people. So I need to figure out what it is that I can build to support them, because clearly I'm posting about, social media, how to make their social media better. And clearly these people are like, I want this. I need this information. This is very valuable to me. And so I'm like, how can I serve them better? And of course, I've read books and figured out that what I really need to do is talk to them. And so I set up validation calls from, I put it out on my social. I said, hey, I'm working on something. If you have time to talk to me for 15 minutes. And then I talked to like maybe 10 or 11 people. Let me tell you, AI, I have not talked about my friend Chatty once during this, but Chatty has been throughout this entire thing. One thing that I found very valuable is the ability for Gemini to transcribe the calls. And I can take those transcriptions and put them into chat, and chat can help me organize, not only organize the information, but spot trends, spot like repetition, group things in a way where I can start seeing the patterns very easily. And I was hearing the patterns as we were talking. And so I'm still currently in the process of building what the next chapter of my business is going to look like. But that switch in September changed everything for me. And it has given me so much more focus, which is what I was looking for. And I mean, the validation calls also just confirmed to me that I am headed in the right direction. And I believe that the universe is always conspiring in my favor, and that things that it's not that things are going to be easy, but when there's a lot of resistance to going in a certain direction, to me that's a signal that that's not the direction I'm supposed to go in. Because I'm telling you, the level of momentum I have now, the level of ease I have now, as I've leaned back into the thing that we're exactly where I want it to be, and I'm finding my way. Still finding my way. So into December, I spent that month really winding down. I always like to take the last 2 weeks of the month off for the holidays. And so that means there's a lot of work to be done in those first few weeks of December. And so I spent a lot of that time just wrapping things up before I left for holiday break. I even stopped posting on social for those last 2 weeks. I just really enjoyed myself. And then I was on the edge. I remember I was on the edge of hitting 10K in December. But I knew that because I was winding down, other people would be winding down in their businesses. And that also December can be a very crazy time for breweries as far as like business is concerned. A lot of people are out and drinking and enjoying themselves. And so I was like, I'm going to slow down. So I stopped. I came back in January as if I had never left. And I hit 10,000 followers. And currently I'm sitting at 11.2. This is February 8th when I'm recording this. And I've also since been invited to speak at 2 guild conferences. I just spoke that same talk that I gave back in, what was that, June? That same talk I gave in June, I gave in Colorado to the Colorado Brewers Guild members. And I also got invited to go to another guild conference that I'm still deciding on whether I'm going to go or not. There's some things around that, which I won't get into right now. But I also got someone else reached out to me about speaking at their guild, which I need to follow up with them on. But while I'm like not near the income goal that I want to be, I feel like this year has so much momentum. I have so much momentum in the beginning of this year. Business, I think, is going to be slow for this quarter. If I think about last quarter, last year, and how things were slow. Remember January, February, March? I did not have nearly, I didn't have any activity. And I think that it's just indicative of the industry that I'm in. If I think about other quarters past, those quarters have been very quiet for me. And spring is when things pick up. So I've been spending this quarter just basically laying the foundation for the things that I felt would be right to build out of the validation calls that I had in November. So there's still like a lot to come. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited about this year. I would share, there's a quote that I have in my planner. I'm a Capricorn, if you couldn't tell. And I read that 2026 is supposed to be a very special year for us. I think it's a year where a lot of our hard work is going to pay off. And I think there's a large part of me that wants to capture what's happening this year and feeling like I'm in a place to capture a lot of what's going to happen this year. And I want to document this journey. So I think that's the goal. That is the goal. So we'll see how things go. But I thought I really wanted to just capture this past last year, because even though it was really hard, I didn't really, there were just there was so much stress, and it didn't all get alleviated at once. It took time. It started with getting the job with Lacey, being able to have enough income to give back to my family, seeing the growth on Instagram, that momentum. Like, this has just been a very slow progress of getting out of the place I was in, and I feel as if I am building a great foundation on which to build my business on. And I'm just incredibly grateful as I begin this year. So that's all for me.